Maybe this will be a blooper or not a blooper, but a little thing. You know
Love
where I've gotten
bloopers.
this, where I've gotten this idea. Change the outcome. Got to change the outcome.
Yeah,
Equalizer.
I love that.
Denzel Washington, the first movie, one of the best
Yeah.
movies. I think it's just so well done. But at some point, he's sitting with this young girl who's in this horrible, horrible life of prostitution, and they're talking, and he says, "Change the outcome. Change the
Mm,
outcome. Got to change the outcome." And it's just burning in my mind that
mm.
with all the discontent, the holy discontent that people like yourself and Father James Mallon talk about, that has been percolating over the years, that we have to do something to change the outcome,
Yep,
because the same old is just death.
absolutely.
And yeah, so old Denzel Washington.
I love Denzel.
Yeah. Well, welcome everybody to another episode of the Corpus Christi show. Myself and Father Richard, and we're so pleased that we have a return guest, Father John Riccardo. Father John Riccardo, for those who did not watch the first interview, you should go back and watch it, is a priest of the Archdiocese of Detroit. He was ordained in 1996, and he's currently serving as director of Acts 29. For those who do read the Bible, remember Acts 29. We're living in it. All right, so there's only 28 chapters in Acts. We're living in it. It's a new nonprofit apostolate that exists for the purpose of priestly and church renewal. So it's a great site to check out, acts29.org. I encourage everyone to go there and see the fantastic work they're doing. So thank you, Father John. I'm so appreciative of you being with us again.
Great to be with you guys again. Thanks, brothers.
I still use your points about a happy marriage, in my marriage sermon. So with your mom and dad, that's great.
Good. Glad
Yeah.
that could be of some use.
Yeah. So Father Riccardo, here at Corpus Christi, we just launched a 10-year vision that we're really excited about for the parish. And one of the documents that really inspired our decision to undertake this 10-year vision process was a book you recommended from Monsignor Shea and the University of Mary, called From Christendom to Apostolic Mission. So could you share with our parishioners, our audience, how this book has influenced your ministry?
Yeah. Let's try to do this quickly, shall we? So I came across this set of years ago now. In fact, I remember when it was kind of just in a manuscript form. And I remember the first time I read it, I thought, somebody has finally put into words a whole set of things that I and a whole bunch of people that I know have been thinking, I'm sure like you two. And so the summary of the book, right, is basically that the church has existed in two different eras. And one era is an era where the worldview, what I often refer to as just like the lens through which people see life, was pretty much just shaped by the gospel and by a Christian worldview. And that's not to say that like everybody was a saint or even aspiring to be a saint. It's just that things like law and politics and education and entertainment and everything was done through a biblical lens. And in an era like that, if you're in the church, or especially if you're leading in the church, all you really have to do is maintenance, because the current of the culture is just going in the same direction. So there's not a lot of effort required. The temptation in an era like that is like spiritual mediocrity, because there's no danger to being a disciple. There's no real thrill. That era was roughly, say, 400s until probably the French Revolution, and then it's been kind of eroding in lots of different places ever since then. The other situation that the church has found itself operating in is what the authors call an apostolic era, or better, actually, an era where the mode of engagement is apostolic. And the distinguishing thing about this time is that the worldview, the lenses that people are wearing, is not a biblical worldview. In fact, it's a worldview which is either ignorant of the gospel, or it's downright hostile to it. And if you try to do maintenance in that kind of an era, because the current's going in a different direction, you just go backwards.
Mm.
And so the thrust of the book, in many ways, and it's really more like an essay, is to just highlight this, because I think oftentimes, I don't know about you guys, certainly Father Bruce, probably you and me, just because of we're a little bit older, like we were trained for a Christendom era.
Yeah.
And Father Richard, you may not have been. I'm not sure. You're probably like on the cusp, but we were very much trained for a Christendom era, and it's tempting in the church to just get nostalgic, like, oh, why can't we just go back to an imaginary time? Because we're always thinking it was so much easier then, but it really wasn't. But at least the culture was going in the same direction.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to be cognizant of which era are we in, and then we need to make sure that we're coming up with and we're using strategies and tactics which fit that era, or else we will. I love the way they put this in the essay. We'll end up fighting the last war,
Mm-hmm.
which oftentimes I think is kind of what it looks like in the church.
Mm-hmm. I find it's not as though we're just going back to an apostolic era that the first apostles had, but as he puts in the book, referring to C.S. Lewis, that you're not trying to win the maiden now, the young virgin, but you're trying to woo back the divorcee. You're trying to woo back the woman who believes she'd been presented with a relationship and downright rejected it. So what would you say, like, just getting the clear reality of, okay, we're in this time right now, what is the essential shift that actually has to happen to go from a Christendom mode to an apostolic mode? Like, what would you say are the key ingredients at the parish level that we need to undertake to successfully transfer into this apostolic mode?
Yeah, well put. So for us, this is where I think the essay is most deeply resonated with our own work. It really boils down, I think, to one thing, which is that the single most urgent task, at least evangelistically in the church right now, is an attractive and compelling proclamation of the gospel.
Mm.
Because, quite simply, most people have never heard it. They think they have, or they've heard bits and pieces of it, but they've never really heard it. And I think so. Here's where the Christendom mode plays out, right? In a Christendom era, most people were very familiar with the biblical story. In an apostolic era, including people who are in the church, most people are not. And so oh gosh, I hope this doesn't sound judgmental or harsh, but I think it's just an acknowledgement of reality. The difficulty, right, is that for not for some people, I would think for all of us, we have mostly worldly minds, which have a few Catholic things popped into it. That's how I once heard one of the guys who helped put the essay together. I think he used an analogy from Frank Sheed. We have worldly minds with Catholic patches, which I think is, if we're honest, like if I'm honest, like that's really true. Like we've been deeply shaped by the culture at large, and you and the three of us are priests. Like we live in the Word of God. We live in all that we've been formed by. And if this could be a struggle for us, how much more for our brothers and sisters who are just kind of like being carried along in the current of the culture, and then they pop into church and they get you for 15, 20 minutes on a Sunday, and then they go back out into the current like you don't have a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Really, And so I think that's one of the most significant things, is just like we've got to, in the way another author puts it, we just need to know the story, and we don't know the story. And so we've got to come up with a strategy of leading people into a compelling proclamation without any without any concern for like, I'm going to convince you of this. Like, that's not on me. Like God's going to convince anybody of this. We're just going to present the gospel. I'm going to present a way of seeing, And then also, I think, and the authors make a point of this too, it's not enough to preach the gospel. We also have to kind of like call out different components of the anti-gospel, and show how it doesn't either make sense or what it dangerously leads to. And not to create straw men as we do this, but to take the best of the arguments of the world and to show that they just don't satisfy. Huge case in point, as they make clear in the essay, one of the tenets of the anti-gospel is the denial of the fall. So there's no fall, there's no hell, there's no Satan, there's no demons, and yet there's clearly evil all around us. But if there's no fall and there's no demons, well, then I have to demonize some group of people, which is exactly what we're doing right now. And so the church right now, another huge task is to kind of hold that up, show how that doesn't make any sense. It's not true. And that in fact, the enemy is the enemy, period. Like the enemy is not another political party. It's not another economic class. It's not another race. It's not another gender. The enemy is hell. And we are all brothers and sisters. Some of us may be at times being used by the enemy. I've been used by the enemy. But, like even Vladimir Putin is not the enemy. Mm-hmm. He's doing wicked things, but he's not the enemy. He's a rebel to win. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe just on sort of a parish level, a manifestation of this difficulty we have that people being in the world seemingly lacking a complete world biblical view, a biblical view of the world, and even a lack of sort of this apostolic formation is the statistics that have come out and that are with us. If we ignore them, I think we ignore them to our peril. Is the vast majority of Catholics now no longer believe in the real presence, the whole gender issues. Gender is a gender rather than, male and female sexuality. It's a fluid thing. I mean, people are truly confused about so many issues, and they don't have the biblical worldview, but even to allow themselves to be formed by the living tradition of the church in order to face these issues as disciples of Jesus Christ. I mean, there's so many others that we both know. The confirmation students are already coming back now, and on it goes.
Yeah, and I might maybe just drive that a little sharper, at least from my perspective. I think that's where, much like you said, to our own peril, if we start with those issues, if we start with, say, sacraments, or we start with morality, especially sexual morality, as they note in the essay, and I think they're spot on, if they haven't first had an opportunity to be overwhelmed by the gospel, we'll just make people angry. Mm-hmm. And I think we're seeing that in the church. It's so common to hear people just jettison the church's teaching on morality. They think it's just a bunch of whatever. Or they jettison the church's teaching on sacramentality because they haven't heard just the gospel, and they haven't had a chance to encounter the love of the Father made visible in Jesus, to surrender to him and to welcome the Spirit in so that I can live an entirely new life. If that doesn't happen, all this other stuff makes no sense, and it pushes people away.
Isn't it so odd that, for example, they hear the gospel every Sunday, they come to Mass, and yet they haven't heard the gospel? Can you sort of help people understand what it means to hear the gospel but not hear the gospel?
Yeah, no, thanks. So here's how my favorite way of talking about this. John Paul, in a letter that he wrote on catechesis back in '79, I think. So the teaching of the faith, catechesis, which follows evangelization, or at least it should. Mm-hmm. It doesn't always in the church. That's part of the problem. It precedes evangelization. We've presumed they've been evangelized, but that's a dangerous presumption. So in this letter, John Paul talking about what technically in the church we call the kerygma, which just means the proclamation. It's like the essence of the announcement of what God has done for us and how we should respond. He says that the initial ardent proclamation of the gospel, the kerygma, should be such that a person is gradually overwhelmed and is brought to a decision, or brought to a place where they make a decision to entrust their whole lives to Jesus in faith. And the way I do that, I just say, like outside from Corpus Christi, stand up at any other parish and just ask for a show of hands on Sunday and say, quick show of hands, how many people here have been overwhelmed by the gospel? And I don't think you're going to get very many. And then you're going to ask follow-up question, how many people here have made a decision to entrust their whole lives to Jesus in faith? And you're going to be, like searching in vain for more than a half dozen hands. Mm-hmm. And so we hear Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, but we don't hear small g gospel, at least in most parishes, in a concentrated, dedicated fashion. So like in 4 or 5 weeks, we're just going to lay out the story of why did God create the world? What's wrong with it? What's he done about it? And how should I respond? And if we do that, then we will be better able to hear the capital G gospel, not to mention the Old Testament and Paul's letters and the other letters, because now it has like a context for which it can land. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, at your previous parish, you did this in a real practical way through launching Alpha, and we heard about how you stripped away all of the programs except RCA, and you got 2,500 people, you said, in 3 years through Alpha, and you shared about the fruits of that for that proclamation of the gospel. Can you just share what that experience is like? Because we're going to launch Alpha in September, and we really want our people to be convinced that this is a real way to have that charismatic proclamation of the gospel. So share with us your experience and tips, whatever you got for us.
I got to Alpha through the back door because I fought it like crazy for years, because it didn't originate from the Catholic Church, and it was a canned program, and I like to teach, as you guys do. But a good friend of mine was the director of it in a Catholic context, and he kept trying to get me to do it or to look at it, and I wasn't interested. And I finally did, but I did because we were in the middle of making a proposal to the Archbishop to confirm our children at a younger age, because I had gone to him and said, it's the worst day of my life each year as a pastor is confirmation, because I feel like I have to lie. And because I don't think they really know what they're doing, and I don't think it's their fault, but I don't think they know what they're doing. So I wanted to ask his permission to confirm at a younger age when I think they're more docile. And as I was talking about this, somebody in the conversation said, that's good, but you still need to get the parents. And I'm like, I know I need to get the parents. And they just kind of like on a whim said, you should look at Alpha. And I went, what does that have to do with any of this? So I kind of begrudgingly watched together with one of the priests I was serving with and a woman who was kind of my right hand. I think we ordered all the talks. We watched, we set aside a day to watch them. And I'm sitting with, a pen, not expecting to take any notes, like this is not going to be any good. And I was blown away. Middle of the first talk, I'm like, that's actually a very good point. I'm writing down some things like, never heard him say that like that. By the third talk, I think I just looked at everybody and says, we don't need to watch anything more. I'm sold on this. We can do it. Let's do it. But if we're going to do this, we're going to do it big. And I want to cancel everything we do with the exception of the things that we have to do, so that as many people as possible can have access to this. Because here's the key, for us in our parish, which is not the case everywhere, but for us in our parish, we had prayerfully discerned that the single biggest wound in our parish family was that people had been catechized and sacramentalized, but never evangelized. And we knew that because they told us.
Mhm. Because
I'd ask them, like, hey, do you have a friendship with Jesus? And the common response was, no, I'm Catholic. You want to go, oh, that's not the right answer, And so people were routinely just telling us they didn't have an intimate friendship with God. And so I went into Alpha thinking, I think this is going to be a very helpful way to lead people into that kind of vertical relationship. And it did. I mean, we had so many people come back to the church, back to confession, back to the sacraments. What I totally did not expect was, and this is all the more important right now coming out of what we've been living through the last couple of years, is this relationship, this horizontal relationship of people actually becoming a community. And again, Father Richard, maybe not so much for you, but I think for us, like, I don't know about you, Padre, but like I kept hearing about community when I was in the seminary. I'm like, this is so overrated.
I get it.
And man, am I one on it right now, because we're made for relationship, and not just with God, but with each other. And so it really, what it did is it made a big parish small, in that people came to know each other. And then we had a tool to invite people to, which had a really low threshold. It was just hey, you want to come to a night at the bar? I mean, it was like, it was free. There was no pressure. If you don't want to come, you don't want to come, because we would do it in the church, we do it in homes, we do it in bars, we do it in restaurants, we did it at work. And it was a game changer for us, a total game changer for us.
Can you just break open for people? I mean, it sounds perhaps obvious. I think it's kind of obvious to me, and I assume to Father Richard as well, but to the parishioners watching this, why does it take a big parish? Ours is fairly big, not the biggest by any means in the Archdiocese, and make it a more intimate family? Like, what happened that you saw that really kind of blew your mind?
Because the core of Alpha is small groups. And most of us, if we're really honest, I think, with each other in a parish, unless we serve like on a committee or a commission, or we do some volunteer work, or we come to a Bible study, we don't know each other. We don't even know the people's names that we sit next to in the same pew every week. And after like X number of years, we've long past the point of being able to say, like, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, even though I've been sitting next to you for the last 7 years, And so because the liturgy is the way it is, right? We don't typically do lots of things to talk, because it doesn't seem appropriate before Mass or after Mass. Unless we're intentional about creating opportunities to get to know each other, it's possible for us to be in the same location and actually never know each other. We know people in our knitting group, or our bowling league better than we do at the church.
Father Riccardo, if you had to do it all over again, if you were in our shoes here at Corpus Christi, planning to launch Alpha in September, would you do anything different? What would be some of your advice just in the launch of it?
So we did it in a kind of radical way because we canceled everything. And, everybody told us, like, you shouldn't do it that way. But we offered it 7 days a week, 10 times a week. And I would do it again in the same way, mainly because I had been there for some time. And so I think I had trust from people by and large, and most of the people who didn't like me had already left by that point. So there was some street cred, I think, that was present in the parish as a whole. And we did it. I think what was important was we brought a series of different entities through it first. Like, so we used the summer months to bring the staff through it, parish council through it, various committees through it, so that they could spread good rumors. Right. So they just helped us kind of get the word out in a way that was very effective. But I do it the same way.
Awesome.
Just a question, curious question on my part. In your experience, because for those who don't know it, Father Riccardo travels around the United States now. Hopefully, when the situation with COVID is gone, he will be able to come into Canada, but travels a lot in the States, deals with a lot of dioceses, bishops, and priests. Is there anything that you have found that parallels or is better than Alpha for doing what Alpha does?
Yeah. So there are a lot of different, couple things. First of all, Alpha is not a program. This is huge to get right. So if the church tends, I think, to fall into what Mary and our team calls a Netflix mentality. Mm-hmm. Like just find the next thing and hit play. That's never going to bring transformation anywhere. Yeah. It's got to be ingrained in a culture where it fits into what you guys are doing. It fits into a vision. Why are we doing this? Well, we're doing this because we're desirous to bring as many people as we can into a life-changing encounter with Jesus, mm-hmm. and to go out and to evangelize. Why? Because there's no hope for the world apart from Jesus, because nobody else has a remedy to sin and death. If it's just, well, this will be a cool thing to do next, and it looks like it's kind of popular, let's try it, it just won't work. There are other experiences out there. We actually have one. I mean, so what we've been doing as we go around the country, the first thing that we do is we just preach the gospel, small g. So we've brought about 2,000 priests on retreat through this over the last 3 years. And we've brought, I don't know, probably the same number of laymen and women. Now we're starting to do it in kind of a revival fashion around the country. And we've just turned it into a video series, which we're giving away for free as well. It's parallel to Alpha. I don't know that anything's better than Alpha, quite honestly. It's what we created is not intended to be a Catholic version of Alpha. It's just how the Lord's led us to preach the gospel. Mm-hmm. And it's explicitly Catholic because it has the Mass in it. And it also talks, there's two things I think that are distinct in what we do, in addition to like incorporating the Mass. The first is it very clearly highlights the enemy, because mm-hmm. that's a huge part of the story. Like, why is everything wrong? And it also, it really strongly ends with trying to offer people a way to get clarity and alignment on the mission that is the church's mission right now. Which I don't think is, I know in my own life as a priest until somewhat recently, I don't really know that I would have had a way of articulating, like, what are we supposed to be doing right now, other than, once you've had the encounter, other than growing in holiness. And, you know, in these Lenten days leading into Easter, I mean, I think what really changed everything for me was when it really began to sink in. What was Jesus doing on Easter Sunday? And what he was doing was not simply triumphing over death, although he was beginning the recreation of the universe, which he loves. And so our mission as disciples must be a continuation of that mission, mindful that we can't bring it about, like we can't build the city of God despite the song, but we can build for it. And we're supposed to be building for it. We're supposed to be trying to transform and recreate and heal and reconcile this world in which we live, which might cost us our lives. But who cares, because Jesus is Lord and death doesn't really frighten me. And I don't think we talk much about that in the church.
Yeah, no, so everybody who watches this in Corpus Christi, remember Alpha is not a 10 series programs like Netflix. It's
right. Don't binge watch.
That's right. I love that. Tell Mary it's another good one. Come from her.
I will.
Brother Riccardo, I want to quote my favorite passage from Christendom to Apostolic Mission and just ask you a question. So it says, 2,000 years ago, 11 apostles were sent to win the entire world for Christ. They had only a few hundred followers and meager resources. They were without the means and institutions by which to develop a Christian culture. The odds were against them, and they had every reason to despair. But instead, equipped with only the promise of Christ and the conquering spirit of the gospel, they accepted their great commission and they overcame the world. They provide for us a bright image of an apostolic mode of engagement. Let us ask how we, both individually and as a church, can make the shift. How can we move from a Christendom mode to an apostolic mode? A lot is riding on the answer. I find one of the key shifts that has to happen here, that Divine Renovation has really made clear to us in their assistance of the 10-year vision, is for us to lead from a team. Just as the quote shared, Christ entrusted this mission to the apostles. He invested 3 years in these men, and eventually they were sent on mission. Can you just speak about the importance of leading from a team? Because we know that's one of your key principles for Acts 29 ministry. So just share, especially our senior leadership team will be watching this, just the importance of, that
Sure.
from a team and why that's essential for an apostolic mode, rather than just the priest doing everything and everyone else
Right.
comes to receive.
Right. So something to preface it first, to go back to that comment from the book. I think at the heart of that, first of all, is what the apostles had was a very different mind than we do, or a very different attitude than we do. They had no resources, they had no buildings, they had no written gospels, they had very few followers, but they knew Jesus was Lord. And I think what we have is a very defeated mind in the church, because the metrics are terrible. And so it's easy to operate with very little hope. It's kind of like last one out, turn the lights off. They had utterly unshakable confidence in Jesus. And I don't think we do. And we don't sound like we do. We don't act like we do. We don't plan like we do. So that's the first thing. I think we need to ask them to intercede for us for that mind. Just unshakable confidence, which is not to be naive. It's really not even to be optimistic, but it is to be hopeful. Then they were intelligent enough to know nobody should do this alone. Somehow we forgot that. So we call this the Jethro principle. So we just had this in the Office of Readings a couple days ago, in Exodus, when Moses' father-in-law, who has the wonderful name of Jethro, comes to Moses and says, my translation, this is the Riccardo translation, you, sir, are a moron. And Moses is like, what are you talking about? And he says, you're the only person handling every decision, and the people are exhausted, and you cannot stand the strain. And so he says to Moses, you need to ask the Lord and look around for 70 wise men, in our case, 70 wise men and women, to help you shoulder the strain so that these people will not be exhausted and you will not collapse. And so he does. And then God gives his spirit to those 70. We desperately need this in the church. And I think the passage that increasingly to me is worth reflecting on, especially as a leadership team. So for those of you who are part of the leadership team, Acts chapter 13 describes the church in Antioch, which is the first place that the disciples were called Christians. And they're gathered together one day, and as they're praying, the Spirit says, set apart Paul and Barnabas for the work of ministry, to which I have called them. And I imagine Paul and Barnabas leave that gathering, prayer meeting, whatever it was, and they go out for coffee and what do we do now? And then they had to figure it out, prayerfully figure it out. But I share that because I think the mind is where this all begins. My question to you on the leadership team would be, do you have a job Or do you have the conviction that you have been set apart by the Lord for the work of ministry at Corpus Christi?
Hmm.
And if it's the former, ask the Lord to change that. If it's the latter, then press into it.
Hmm.
And then if in fact we have been set apart, well, then the Lord must be knowing what he's doing, and he must have given different ones of us different gifts, and we desperately need each other. And this cannot all fall on the shoulders of any one or two people, because the work's too big. And the gift of a leadership team, first, the leadership team's task, the way we've always seen it, is to help the pastor, the bishop, the clergy to prayerfully discern God's plan for the parish, and then to communicate it and find leaders who can make it happen.
Hmm.
Not to do all the work. Their work is to discern the plan, effectively communicate it, and then raise up leaders to bring it about. And that's a very different model, I think, than what we see currently operating in most churches. Where it's in place, it means there are fewer heart attacks, and there are better ideas, because no one person has all the answers, right?
Mm-hmm. One thing I try to communicate to people, this truth by way of contrast, maybe by way of contrast, is because it is, I believe, the rightful role of the members of the lay faithful, is to say, even if the parish had 5 priests, which of course very few have, but these hub versions, where you got 5 in one, they go out and do ministry. But even if they had 5 in one parish, we should still be doing this to call out the gifts of the lay faithful to exercise their royal priesthood, which of course is it is a biblical term, but most people of course have no clue what that means. But to exercise their gifts and work with the priest to help basically bring the parish to Christ.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I don't know what happened that we aren't doing this kind of a model, but I need other people to lead with. It just makes no sense to do this on our own. Good leaders create good followers.
And raise up other
Great,
leaders.
great leaders raise up leaders.
Yeah. Yeah, but see, once in a while in the history of the church, God seems to have tried to communicate to us this idea by raising up Francis. I know that led to a religious order, but this idea that lay people were called to, because a lot of lay people followed him, but we just seem to fall back into a clerical model again.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the excitement of these days. I think the Spirit wants to create, where we'll give him room. He's going to create lots of new models of ways to do things, which are going to be very faithful and consistent with everything that the church has done. It's just going to be that new in ardor, new in method, new in expression that John Paul called for when he called for the new evangelization. So it's not a detachment from, or a separation from, or a break from all that we've received. It's just that this is our task, living in an era where we need an apostolic mode of engagement. We can't have isolated priests, for one, because the culture is going the wrong way. So that just makes it's not good for a priest. And we need much stronger collaboration between priests and lay, respecting the hierarchy, respecting all that clearly. But that doesn't mean, so the best thing I would say about our team, we have extraordinary conflict. And as a friend of mine who just got hired in a diocese put it, I've never been a part of an organization that's run from conflict faster than the church. And you have to have conflict, not contention. You have to have good, passionate, healthy conflict, because that's how great ideas emerge. And if you have a biblical worldview, so you know who the Lord is, we're confident that he is Lord, that he knows what he's doing, that he's created us for this moment, that we don't have to be afraid. We are a team, which means we trust each other, we're vulnerable with each other, we have great conflict with each other, we hold each other accountable, we're committed to results. Then when we pray together as a team, which is the key, well, then when we come out of prayer to discern what we're praying, we can go at it. We unapologetically go at it, because we're just going to go, what'd you hear? What'd you hear? Here's what I heard. And then we're just going to throw the things on the table, and the Lord's going to lead us in that passionate discussion to the best ideas, because brainstorming is not how we're going to get anywhere. You know, prayer in so many parishes is an agenda item, and it shows. Like, we're not going to go anywhere if prayer is an agenda item. Like I think Cardinal Cantalamessa said once, the apostles didn't pray before they did their work. The apostles prayed in order to know what the work is. We don't do that very well in the church. We've got to do that again. But I'm going to discern what he's saying by going into a chapel with you guys and with our brothers and sisters in the leadership team. And we're going to come out of that trying to discern what we heard. Does that make sense? That's huge.
Yeah, what would be your advice just in like the practical of that? You know, we have some leadership team meetings upcoming, and we haven't prayed together yet because we're forming the leadership team. Like, we haven't had our first offsite meeting as a new team. So what would just be your advice on the practicals of growing? Because it definitely requires vulnerability and to break past that initial hesitancy that people can often have. What's your advice, lessons learned from really having prayer foundational to the leadership team?
So we feel like the Lord has taught us three primary ways to pray when we're discerning things. So one is like a physician, one is like a general, and then one is like admission control. So what you do is you kind of tee up a question to pray with. So go into the chapel, you can spend a half hour or so. And the prayer as a physician is what we call diagnostic prayer. And the question we're bringing to the Lord is, Lord, show us what is the biggest wound in this parish. What's the single biggest need in our family? And then you ask him. And then you come out of that and you start going around like, what did you hear? What did you hear? What did you hear? And it's amazing how the Spirit speaks through that. That's how you make decisions, you know? The second way, as a general, we call it strategic prayer. And you're going back into the chapel and you're asking the Lord this question: what area are you asking us to concentrate our attention now? Like, where are you asking us to attack, to liberate, to go on the offensive against the enemy? Might be marriage and family, might be youth, might be maybe you got an area where there's a lot of human trafficking, who knows what it is. And then you come out of that and you argue. And then the third way, which I've kind of fallen more and more in love with as well, is you ask the Lord, this kind of comes from a passage in 2 Kings. We want to see the strategy of hell. Because you guys got a 10-year vision for Corpus Christi. You have ambitious plans to bring transformation, renewal, not only to the people in the parish, but to reach those who are lost, who are in danger of living without hope and dying. Hell's not happy about that. So hell has a strategy. Like, the enemy gets a vote. This is not neutral territory that you're living in. And so what you're asking is, Lord, help us to see what they're planning. And one of the ways to try to do that is just, like, as a leadership team, think and pray about, if you were trying to thwart the efforts of Corpus Christi from being effective, what would you do? And I'll bet you'll come up with about a dozen things like that. And if that's true, well, then you can probably plan that those are the things that they're doing, and then some, and then it helps you go, we hadn't thought about that. We should be very attentive to that, make a plan for that, be prepared for that, whatever the case might be.
I know one of their top plans is to divide Father Hamilton and myself. I'm quite confident that they go after the bullseyes are on the priest back first, right? Take the leader out, and the rest will follow. So,
yeah, no, I just think of how much time sports teams watch the opponents. I mean, hours and hours of video. Coaches, like, even more so, to know the strategy of their opponents inside and out, and it's over and over and over again, and that's how they train their teams. So it's actually for those who might think that's a weird thing to do, it's actually a very wise thing to do, and it's done all the time in regular life. So it's a great principle. I'm just wondering, because one of my concerns, and I've said this many times before, and probably if it actually happens, I'll be a bit, I'll find it difficult that I've actually succeeded, is how do you get lay people, to the point where they can constructively disagree with their priest? You know, that problem, and because I think priests, they might say, I want to hear your opinion, but I really don't want to hear your opinions. And so for the laity to establish that, so that they actually feel and know, I know it's ultimately going to be in actions, but to know that unless they're able to speak what they are thinking, and obviously cultivate an atmosphere of constructive, I would call it charity, I guess, maybe that's not the right word. But for the priest to be confident that when people oppose him, that's a good thing. Can you speak to that, because you've been doing this so long?
So I think the key is, when you invite somebody onto the leadership team, you tell them why. And then when you gather them all together, you tell them why. This is what I'm asking of you. And I've asked you here for these reasons. One, I believe you love the Lord. I believe you're faithful to the church. I believe you have respect for me, and you are passionate about the vision that we have for Corpus Christi, like I am. And I believe you can push back. And I need you to push back. And I trust that you'll do that respectfully, because we're brothers and sisters. And that's why, so I think just laying out what this is about, why I've asked you here, and then just giving permission. And but I think that's also why there needs to be work done to build trust, to create vulnerability, to learn how to do healthy conflict. That's some of the work that guys like Pat Lencioni, and especially guys like him, I think, have done so well. And we've, I don't know if you've ever seen, I'm sure you have, the 5 dysfunctions of a team, which is so present, like, in the church, right? So lack of trust, lack of vulnerability, lack of conflict, or unhealthy conflict. What we're doing right now is we're just overlaying every one of those with scripture. So think of so in other words, like, I don't just trust you, I do, but I don't just trust you, I also trust the Lord. We want to have healthy conflict with each other, but I'm also open to conflict with the Lord. Like, the Lord doesn't hesitate to push back on me. And there's so many scenes in the Gospels where you can see Jesus doing that, whether it's with James and John just the other day, or whatever the case might be, or telling Peter, get behind me, Satan, or whatever it might be, right? So finding somebody to come in and to make you a team, because you can't do it, Father. You can't create it, because you're part of it. So, like, when we did all the work, whether it was at the parish or in Acts 29, I had to bring somebody in from outside to work with us, of which I was a part of the us, so that we could, land on becoming a cohesive team. And then land on I'm thinking of Lencioni again here in his book, The Advantage, that when he talks about becoming healthy as an organization or as a body, in this case in the church, kind of landing on clarity with regards to us as a leadership team. Why do we exist? How do we behave? What do we do? How will we succeed? What's most important right now and who must do what? Like, whether it's marriage or any other relationship with the church, I think where things quickly break down is I didn't know what the expectation was. So what are our expectations and what is the clarity around who we are and what we do and why we are?
Very good. Father Riccardo, just to conclude, can you just give a message to our parishioners? They've just heard our parish vision. They know a lot's going to change. There's probably, there's a lot of hope, I'm sure, for the future. But as we all know, change is hard. And can you just give a message to our parishioners of kind of why it's so essential that we actually all go about a deep change here at Corpus Christi?
Can I ask what the vision is?
Well, we gave a picture of the future. It's not like a slogan.
Okay.
It's quite a detailed picture of what the future at Corpus Christi looks like. So we can send it to you.
I'd love to see it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think two things maybe. One, I actually think we love change. I think what we don't love is the messiness of how we get from where we are to where we're going. But I love change. We're constantly changing. We're constantly growing. I think where it gets frustrating is I don't know why we're leaving here and we're going there. And I think the argument that you guys are making from Christendom to Apostolic is, well, because we actually left this a long time ago culturally, and we're just now catching up to it in the church. So that's why we're leaving where we were and where we're going. But I just want to encourage people, like, change is fun. As long as I have trust in who's leading us, which ultimately is God. Like, God doesn't play games, and God's not nervous right now. So we just need to get behind him and trust, okay, the Lord knows what he's doing. He's the one who has the plan for Corpus Christi ultimately. And he's going to continue to make it known every step of the way. And you have a plan, and you stick with that plan until he gives a better one. And you follow it, and trust that he's probably going to say, no, actually right now we're going to go right. Like, oh, I had planned on that. So embrace the change. And here's why I think, especially in this time we're living in, coming out of what we've just come out of, it's never been more urgent. There is no hope for anybody apart from Jesus, because nobody else has a remedy to sin and death. And I don't know, maybe you've been living in a cave over the last couple of years. The world we're living in right now, especially Western culture, especially Canada and the US, is increasingly despairing, lonely, fearful, anxious, isolated, disconnected, and lost. And God doesn't want anybody to be lost, lonely, isolated, anxious, fearful, or disconnected. And as his disciple, I shouldn't either. And so we want to invite them into the fellowship that is life in Christ. Broken as we ourselves are, but as we continue to aspire to get better, to be more a family as a parish, to be more on fire with the love of the Holy Spirit, to be more a place where people walk in and go, oh, they get it. Like, here's real unity in genuine diversity. Like, these people don't have anything in common, but here's what they have in common. They know Jesus is the one who changed their lives, and they've sold out for him, and they love each other, and they lay down their lives for each other. And it's not just talk, it's real. And I won't be a part of that.
A great realistic assessment of where our culture is and the hope, the only hope that we have in Jesus Christ.
Amen.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, Father Riccardo, for the time with us.
Great.
Really
Always
good.
inspiring. Love the podcasts. Love all that you're doing. It's truly a real inspiration for us. So we're blessed to have this time again with you, and I'm sure our parishioners will really appreciate hearing this and allowing this to continue to encourage them going forward with all the change here.
Hopefully one day in the not too distant future, I'll see you guys in the flesh and we'll be able to do
Yes.
this for real live.
I hope so. I'll keep
That'd be
pushing.
great. Amen.
Would you please close us out in prayer?
Sure thing. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Father, we just thank you for the grace of being alive right now. We are mindful that in your providence, you have destined us for this era, this time, this day, in the midst of all that's happening all around us. So help us to continue to come to know you more intimately, what you've done for us in Jesus. Continue to transform our lives by the power of the Holy Spirit. Help us to know those gifts that you've placed into us, and help us to use them well, so that working side by side with each other, we can be an attractive, joyful, compelling witness to the world, which is desperate for you, even if they don't know it. And that we would never give in to fear, never give in to anxiety, but always place our hopes, our trust, our confidence in you, who are our good Father. And so may Almighty God bless you, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
Amen.
Amen.